Oh my goodness. That was annoying. Now, my good friend Dave, you know Dave Kavanagh, Irish Dave? He's had so many issues recently, signal-wise and app-wise. I've been so lucky until tonight. This is Peter Jones. We see everything? Yeah, there we go. So we'll cut a few minutes from this. This is the Venus fountain, and we're in Sloane Square. This is supposed to represent, even though it's just a naked woman, for some reason, this is supposed to represent Charles II and his relationship with Nell Gwyn. BM said they've had to reschedule about 3 of Dave's shows due to technical issues. It happens, doesn't it? You know. So apparently this is Charles. Charles II had 16 mistresses. And the most romantic part of all is that he said Nell Gwyn was his favourite. Isn't that lovely? He commissioned a King's Road. It's not this road. This is Sloane Street. We're going to walk up. This is the King's Road. But they had a burst water main. About 15 minutes ago, I walked along there. And they said, nope, you can't go down there. So all of these buses are going up and they're taking the first left down side streets. It's not going to be fun for them. Our walk is going to take us from here. Peter Jones, who he was the son of a Welsh hat manufacturer. He came to London in the 1870s and he built a very small store here. Then it was bought by the John Lewis Company in the 1930s. So this building is from the 1930s. And it's, even though it looks quite simple, architecture students find this fascinating. It's a rare example, what we would call a glass curtain wall. So almost everything is glass, just very thin bits of steel. And it's protected, as in grade 1 listed. So they can't do anything to the front of that building. Now you have these listed buildings in the UK. Quite a few of them are in this area. And a listed building, National Heritage, the list of protected buildings, they don't have to be beautiful. Some of them are just rare and they're important architecturally. There are quite a few in London that you may walk past them and think, I don't like the look of those. One of them is London Bridge. The modern London Bridge was built in 1973, and if you've ever taken a walk around the South Bank near Shakespeare's Globe, London Bridge is a very simple granite bridge, but it's actually hollow. And architecture students find that fascinating. So we're at an area called Sloane Square. The Royal Court Theatre is just to the right of us. And many of the buildings around here are named after 2 people, the Earl of Cadogan and Hans Sloane. We use a phrase in the English language, Sloane Ranger. Basically posh people. that live in Chelsea. Everything looks beautiful at night. We're going along Sloane Street. It's probably the most affluent, shop-wise area in the country. So we've got Cartier, and we've got Tiffany. Doves, do apologise. What church? Holy Trinity Church. This is from the 1880s. Oscar Wilde used to go here. Oscar Wilde lived not too far from here at all. And a lot of his friends would congregate outside here just to meet Oscar Wilde. Obviously, such a celebrity at the time. I don't think there's a service going on, but the doors are open. I suppose we could. It might be a slight reflection. It might get me. There is a service going on. So there can't be a chance of me going in there. I would never disrespect these people. Is it cold? It's not too bad, actually. I've got many layers on though, so I'm all right. We've had a period of about 3 weeks of horrific rain, but the land needed it after a very hot summer. I was working at the Globe Theatre all summer, an open air theatre. They measured the temperature one afternoon in the middle of July at the Globe at 44 Celsius or 113 Fahrenheit, and that was in the middle of a show. And there were 1,600 people inside the theatre at the time. And the thatched roof at the Globe has this roof made from water reed, which all of these buildings would have had pre-1666, the Great Fire of London. A lot of buildings, and even in this area, which wasn't part of London back then, they would have had thatched roofs. Very flammable, made from water reed, but the Globe is the only one in London now. And the sprinkler system at the Globe went off in the middle of the show, and it's the only time it's happened in the 25 years the building has been open. It was like the Globe itself, the building itself was saying, I think I'm on fire. I don't know what the Globe spoke like, but probably something like that. So we have a Sloane Street, a Cadogan Lane, a Sloane Square, a Sloane School, all to do, really, with just two people, the Earl of Cadogan and Hans Sloane. Many bohemian artists lived in this area, all connected with Oscar Wilde. I said he didn't live too far from here. The Cadogan Hotel was where he was arrested for indecency and then sent to Reading jail. That kind of ended his career, really. Look at these buildings. This is a private bar and hotel. So a lot of this walk is to do with views. Sloane Street on one side has Cadogan Gardens. It's very dark on that side. But as we approach the top, the high-end fashion is something to behold. Just up here on the left, a woman called Dorothy Bland, who later became Dorothy Jordan. Number 30. Now, actors, excuse me, I literally got some of this tree in my mouth just then. Actors in the late 1700s ended up becoming quite respectable people. In Shakespeare's time, they were considered tools of propaganda. The plays were on at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in open-air theatres, so with a population 90% of whom couldn't read or write, actors were seen as, I suppose, rogues, mysterious people, taking people away from work and church. And then the theatres reopened after Puritan rule by Charles II, and gradually royalty patronised the theatre. And they were called Theatre Royals, or they were named after royalty. The Prince Edward, the Duke of York's, the Prince of Wales. There's a theatre in the West End where Phantom of the Opera has been on for many years, and that has always changed name depending on the monarch. So it's been known as Her Majesty's, His Majesty's, Her Majesty's, and they're debating now whether to rename it His Majesty's. But Dorothy Jordan ended up becoming a very well-respected actress, but then started an affair with the Duke of Clarence, who then became King William IV. So it all relates back to Charles II, who had this relationship with Nell Gwyn. And Nell Gwyn lived just around the corner from here, just up to the right. Nell Gwyn originally, in her life, when she was 14, 15 years old, was an orange seller outside the theatre. And people at Drury Lane say they can still smell oranges as if Nell Gwyn has just walked by. And the King's Road originally was commissioned by Charles II to lead from Westminster to Hampton Court. But strangely, it passed by this road that cost, in today's money, hundreds of millions of pounds to build. It passed by Nell Gwyn's house. So royalty and theatre, they've always had this link. The link between royalty and theatre now is really only represented by Prince Edward, who started work at Andrew Lloyd Webber's Really Useful group. And they say, by all accounts, he wanted to be an actor, or work in the theatre at least. And then he had royal duties, so I suppose he went, his life was taken another way. This is the Cadogan Hotel. This is where Oscar Wilde was arrested for indecency. Oscar Wilde lived on Tite Street, T-I-T-E, not far from here, but 10 doors away lived the judge who sentenced him. Dear Oscar, indeed. Many bohemian artists lived here, but as I said, William Wilberforce just lived down here on Pont Street. Lived a few places. He has the most blue plaques in London. There are 7 dedicated to William Wilberforce. Now we're approaching the Danish embassy. So you have a few embassies in this area. Quite a few are in Holland Park, but a few are here as well, in Kensington and Chelsea. The designer of the Danish embassy, obviously lights are turned off, is Arne Jacobsen. If you've ever seen an egg chair, quite a famous design. That same man designed this embassy. Okay, there's a wonderful statue of Oscar Wilde in Merrion Square in Dublin. There is, I know Dave has showed that many a time. He's reclining, isn't he? The great Oscar Wilde. Also got the Peruvian embassy just up here. But what we're going to do is continue along, and as we come up the road, you'll see that it suddenly becomes Armani, Christian Lacroix. The higher we go up this road, Sloane Street, the more high-end the shops become. And we started down at the Royal Court Theatre. The Royal Court was really outside the West End. It was what they called a theatre club. And in this area, as well as the bohemian artists who felt in the West End, when the police forces were originally started, they felt that they couldn't maybe be the people they wanted to be. They would come here to Chelsea. And the theatres were censored. The plays were all censored here until the 1960s. And places like the Royal Court, the Hampstead Theatre, the Arts Theatre in London, they turned themselves into members' clubs. So you could buy a ticket for a play, but what you were actually doing legally was buying a membership to a club for the evening. And then in 1968, the theatres, they abolished membership of these clubs and they abolished censorship of plays. And the first musical, which changed everything in the West End, was Hair in 1968. As I said, everything's changing now. You've got Prada, you've got Giorgio Armani. You can tell that it's very easy to tell when a car is expensive because it says on the back of it hybrid, and then it also says McLaren. And you think that car could be worth £500,000. The problem is, in London, you have road humps, or as they call them, sleeping policemen, which I like that phrase. So it slows you down on the big roads. So a lot of the low, expensive cars can't go at a high speed. A lot of these central areas, 20 miles an hour is the limit. And then it's 30 miles an hour slightly outside of the West End. And then it becomes between 50 and 70 miles an hour. So it's not approaching the German autobahns where there's no really legalized speed limit. I suppose here, you suddenly go down one of these roads and you find a hump and you're in a McLaren Mercedes hybrid that could be worth £500,000 and you can't get over the hump. They're doing some sewer work. So all of the red you see on the left-hand side, they're redesigning the sewer system. A lot of it hasn't been changed since the late 1800s. A lot of the houses here on either side, even though the bottom of them look like they're modern. So you've got Versace here. A lot of the actual buildings are from the 1700s. This is my kind of stuff here. Kind of stuff I wear most of the time. My goodness. So at the bottom we have the King's Road. At the top we have Knightsbridge. And there was only one pub, one entire public house, drinking establishment along the entire road. And it's known as the Gloucester. And they are very proud to say we are the only pub on Sloane Street. It's what you call a Victorian pub. There you go. The only pub on Sloane Street. And at this time of night, it's quite quiet. Sometimes it's the kind of place, I know Dave always says at the end of a tour, it'd be lovely to have a drink, guys. A few shillings, a few coppers to get a pint. That might be the kind of place to go. I need to say the final reveal on this tour, Harrods and the thousands of LED lights. It's going to be beautiful. The tour, the show, is called Knightsbridge to the King's Road. But when I started up at Knightsbridge earlier outside Harrods, I asked the staff and they said they're not putting the lights on till 7 o'clock. And I thought, we need to do this the opposite way round. Amazing array of high-end. So we passed Chanel, Tiffany. We passed Armani. We passed Gucci. Just clearing my throat. Excuse me. Now we pass Louis Vuitton. Kind of places. You feel comfortable walking in here. There are no prices. And you know the old phrase, if you have to ask the price, you can't afford it. People use the phrase how the other half lives, but it's not necessarily that. It's how the other 0.5% live, isn't it? There were quite a few places up here which changed. So we had Christian Lacroix that were up here, and they moved when COVID locked down everything. They decided that they were going to up and leave. So these places will change. There's a lovely hair salon here. These are things that I passed on the way down. When I was in Knightsbridge and they weren't turning the lights on, I took a slightly different walk. That's something else, isn't it? That's a hair salon. Beauty and hair. And at the back, they have the salons. You might be able to see just there in the center some of the accoutrements, the different perfumes. As my friend calls them, she calls them smellies. I say, what did you get for Christmas? I got a lot of smellies. Tish could get her wig powdered there. It's kind of amazing, isn't it? It's lovely to look at. I don't know if you know the perfume house, Amathi. 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 I need to say it the right way. I don't know them. I've never heard of them. They do this kind of stuff. Again, no prices. Yeah, no prices on the entire road. You can't see a price. One of my favorite designers, when I look at the stuff, is this fella, Tom Ford. So we're talking as high end as you can get. This is probably the only stuff on the entire road that I would think, well, that's class. You'd wear that. So Tom Ford, of course, as well as being a great fashion designer, is also an Oscar-winning designer. And again, you would expect at the bottom to be something saying, I don't know, $50, $100, or whatever you'd want to pay. Maybe slightly more. Okay, let's walk up to Harrods. So the light pollution in this part of London ends up really brightening the screen. So it ends up looking like we're during the day here. And it is beautiful. It might not be environmentally beautiful, especially with energy prices going up. This may be the last time for a couple of years that these places can do this, but they're going for it. And this is Harvey Nichols, which kind of rivals Harrods for their Christmas displays. Everything glitters. But as Shakespeare said, all that glistens is not gold. That's great, looks great. Recessed lighting, I think, is one of the most amazing inventions and creative ideas on Earth. Excuse me. Now we're coming onto Knightsbridge. Got Burberry as well. So all the stores that we recognize the names, people like myself, I wouldn't go here, but I'd pop in. Maybe Burberry, I'd pop in for a look. At the end of this road, Brompton Cemetery, which is one of the most famous cemeteries in London, one of the what we call Magnificent Seven, is here. It was first used in the 1840s. A lot of cemeteries in this country were, and I know the same thing happened in New York. They were burial spaces, but also public parks. But Victorian London was a place of enormous growth, the Industrial Revolution. And it meant that more folks were moving in to work in factories and power stations. The cemetery right at the end of the road. It's 39 acres and it has some, well, let's say illustrious residents. Thank you, Sylvega. Beatrix Potter lived nearby. And a lot of the people that were buried at Brompton Cemetery. Beatrix Potter used as names. There's a Nutkins, a McGregor, a Peter Rabbit. Samuel Cunard is buried not far from here. I'm just turning to the right here because Harrods is on our side as we walk. And I want us to get the best view of it as we come up. It's a nice little reveal. So I'll cross over on this busy night, as it always is, and show you Harrods. It's first and foremost a department store, but it's a historic landmark. It's 5 acres, 2 hectares, 100,000 square meters, 1.1 million square feet. In the middle of the summer, 100,000 shoppers a day. This is trebling now at Christmas. Has a motto, Omnia Omnibus Ubique, all things for all people everywhere. So essentially, the original idea of Harrods was you should be able to buy whatever you want, whenever you want, from wherever you are. And that included, over the years, exotic animals. People could order alligators, tigers, elephants here. They didn't have them on display, that you could order them here. They don't sell pets here anymore. They have pet supplies. It's been owned by many different people. Presently, it's owned by the Qatar Investment Authority, but it was originally founded in 1849. Not many stores, Tisha said, have a Latin motto. It gives them a sort of credence, I suppose, or would have done. The man that opened it, not surprisingly, was named Harrod, Charles Henry Harrod. His first shop in London was not far from the Globe Theatre in Southwark, near London Bridge. And then just to the right, so if you walked along this road and took a right, you'd be in Hyde Park. They had planned something called the Great Exhibition in 1851 to celebrate modern design and the Industrial Revolution. And he realized 2 years before they planned the Great Exhibition that if he bought a small plot of land here, he could make a killing from people trying to get home afterwards. Sad thing was, in the 1880s, it burnt to the ground. But that year, 1883, Charles Henry Harrod fulfilled all of his promises to have everything delivered by Christmas. He honored every single delivery, and it gave him, again, credence. People trusted him, and he made an enormous profit. He also then extended credit to the more illustrious clients, people like Oscar Wilde, people like Charlie Chaplin, Noel Coward, Sigmund Freud, many, of course, of the royal family. Then he sold his shares, Charles sold his shares in 1889, and it changed from what was originally Harrod and Company to just simply Harrods. You may hear music. The shop is just closed for the evening. They're sending people out. It will gradually extend its opening hours into December. But this is a street entertainer who's played some nice music, and he's just kicking a ball around. Now I'll let you into a secret. Anyone that does this, you would think, you see them kicking a ball and playing keepy uppy, you think, wow, why aren't they in a professional soccer team? It's because the ball is weighted. It's got a weight in it, so wherever it lands, it's going to land near their feet. Sorry. The food court, Solvega has said, is amazing. So you've got two great food courts in the big shops in London. One of them is Harrods, one of them is Fortnum and Mason, and they are packed at Christmas. Absolutely packed, and they are wonderful. It is something to do. When you come to London, there are some must-see places. Harrods, Fortnum and Mason, Camden. Look at these lights. In 1898, the first moving staircase in England, or an escalator, was built. It was 1898. Nervous users, and I think I would have done this, they were offered brandy at the top to settle their nerves. I think I would have just constantly gone up the escalator and said, oh, I need a brandy, and then gone down the staircase and come up the escalator again. I'm not stupid. It was owned by the House of Fraser Group, and then quite famously in the 1980s, the Fayed brothers owned it. They owned it till 2010. But as you may know, historically, the Fayed brothers fell out with royalty. This used to be the royal shop. Muhammad Al Fayed, well, historically, he blamed the royal family for the death of his son. He said if his son Dodi had not been involved with the royal family, Princess Diana in particular, then there wouldn't be a death in the tunnel in Paris. He was very vocal about it. There was no evidence either way, but he could not forget it. So royalty were very offended by this. They went closer to Fortnum and Mason, but Harrods still thrives. The snap feature is not working properly. Oh, that is so annoying. Because it is something to behold. So if any of the snaps are working for people, I would say if you go on the Facebook group later, maybe post some of this, that other people can get the snaps. The architect of Harrods was a man named Charles William Stevens. He worked on a few buildings. Harvey Nichols, that we just saw at the end of Sloane Street, he worked on that. Claridge's Hotel, the Park Lane Hotel. A.A. Milne, who created Winnie the Pooh. He bought his son a teddy bear here, but it was called an Alpha Feral. It was an 18-inch bear, and A.A. Milne called it Teddy. Edward, really. You used to be able to order anything in Harrods. Until 1916, you could order cocaine. But we're looking at lights. We're looking at this amazing light display. And there are 12,000 bulbs. I used to know, or I knew an electrician that worked here. They used to say they didn't change the bulbs every day. They would do it about once a month. They would go around and check all the bulbs. And any time they had to go around, there would be at least 200 to 300 bulbs to change. I love it. I love walking around here at night. It's very busy. It's obviously scaffolding, as there is everywhere in London, but there's some beautiful cafes opposite Harrods. These guys know that they're going to make some money from rich shoppers or just regular folks going to Harrods that might want a glass of champagne afterwards. So they might spend a fortune on rent, leasing their land. They also know they're probably likely to make it back really quickly. Let's go back a bit further. Cafe Concerto is a lovely name. Here I am. with old Harrods in the background. Look at that. Apart from the darkness of my face, that's not a bad shot. Thank you so much for joining me. Obviously, we had some issues at the beginning, but we did it. We did it. I was very, very worried, and I do apologize, of course, at the beginning to anyone that said I shouldn't be talking about politics, and I know I shouldn't. It's not the venue for it. We're here to talk about Christmas and 12,000 lights and Harrods and other things to take our minds off everything else. And I hope you enjoyed our little evening together. Come and join me again. I've got a few theme shows running in the next couple of weeks. If you ever come to London, my email address is on my little biog. So Gerard Gilroy, go to that. Give me a call. I'll take you on a tour around the West End. But it's great to see this, isn't it? Sometimes when you come on a tour and a show, the work is done for you because you're in a city where it's just, I could have been silent for the entire thing. And the work is done by buildings and sites like this. But it's also done by you guys. The fact that you're here and watching and commenting and being engaged and then showing appreciation in whatever way you do, it really means the world to us. I discovered these shows, I discovered themes quite late on. Quite a few of the guides discovered it early on in the pandemic. I was late to the party, as it were. But I'm not going anywhere. Thank you so much. And look at that, Dior and Harrods. That's literally my life. Boonway, I didn't make political comments. All I did was say, I just said at the beginning, you've had your midterms. I hope everyone that it's gone the way you wanted. I didn't say anything. I just shouldn't have brought it up. I don't talk about politics. I wouldn't even talk about it to a politician. Don't encourage them, I say. Lots of love. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Take care, and I will see you very, very soon. If you're on other platforms, you may notice that I might be doing some Christmas light tours of other parts of London. If you're on Beams, I'm doing some Christmas lights or Love and Light, Christmas time Love and Light. So I'll be going to Regent Street, South Bank, Carnaby Street, Regent Street, and they'll all be coming up on the schedule very, very soon, because it's not all about Harrods. There's also a lot more lights at this time of year. Take care, see you, and lots of love as per usual. Yeah, need more artists and musicians, fewer politicians. That's good. That's like a rhyme, isn't it? Take care. I'll see you very soon. Lots of love. Bye-bye.